What's up, everyone? Welcome to episode 38 of the Drunken Boxing Podcast, coming to you from a hot and sweaty Beijing, where the only way to survive in this heat and humidity is to eat a diet of watermelon and to walk around with your best Beijing bikini on. Alright, let's get into some Mushin martial culture news. The second episode of In Discussion With was released, and it features a discussion with Will Wayne Williams of Monkey Steel's Peach, along with Brendan Tunks of the Mantis Boxing Society. It was a discussion going into the art of Mantis boxing, its history, branches, and technicalities. It was a highly enlightening discussion, and should be interesting to anyone who wants to know more about this important style of Chinese martial arts. I also released a short glimpse of a technical lesson from the Huajin online learning program, with excerpts from a lesson on the Liang style Bagua Zhang, Lao Ba Zhang, or Old Eight Palms. It can give you some insight into the content that is within the program, and if you are interested in learning the art, check it out. And last week, I released the first episode of the story of Bagua Zhang. This is the first part of this series, which is a translation and dubbing of a series that was released domestically a couple of years ago. I'm also adding relevant info for the international non-Chinese speaking world to be able to watch and enjoy. This is the first part of what will probably end up being an 8-part series, following which I have some plans to conduct further interviews and videos on the art of Bagua Zhang. This first episode goes into Dong Haichuan's history and the tales surrounding it. Again, doing this type of translation and editing is time-consuming and difficult. So any and all support you are able to give me through Patreon makes this worthwhile of my time and skills, and will enable me to produce more such content into the future. There are general support tiers through which you can do that, and any and all support is highly appreciated. And as mentioned, there is also a third tier, the Huajin tier, in which you can study the arts of Xingyi Quan and Bagua Zhang in depth. There is already a vast library of released lesson videos for both Xingyi Quan and Bagua Zhang, as well as their related Neigong. So if you're interested in learning these arts, give the course a try. The Patreon site may be found at patreon.com/Mushin Martial Culture. That's all one word, Mushin Martial Culture. Additionally, as always, the various Mushin Martial Culture merchandise is available on my Teespring store. If you feel like representing these wonderful arts by wearing the coolest swag available featuring them, or if you simply want to support this podcast indirectly, getting some of the Mushin martial culture merchandise is one way to do it. A new design that has just been released is a homage to one of the most revered second-generation masters of Xingyi Quan, who was one of the art's founder, Li Luoneng's original students, namely Che Yizhai. He was born in 1833, and he learned the art of Xingyi Quan under Li Luoneng, and is one of the main founders of what we consider the Shanxi branch of the art. The design I came up with is based on those famous revolutionary Che t-shirts that were all the rage. Seemed kind of fitting, seeing as Che and Che are spelled the same way in romanized pinyin. Anyway, this is one way to represent the art of Xingyi Quan. If you're a Shanxi stylist, it's even better. And it's just in time for summer. You can find the store at the link in the show notes. Okay, on to today's podcast. My guest today is Vincent Mei. Vincent Mei is a certified Tan Generation coach of the Wutan Chinese Martial Arts Association and is currently the head instructor of Wutan USA, New Jersey branch. Vincent Mei inherited his arts from his teacher, the late Dr Chen Chang-Lin, who in turn was a disciple of the famous Liu Yunqiao, who in turn was a closed-door disciple of the famed master Li Shuwen. Vincent Mei has been training and teaching the art of Baji Quan for over 25 years now, and is also proficient in the arts of Pigua Zhang, Bagua Zhang, Taiji Quan, Mizong Quan, and others. He has a passion to promote his beloved art of Baji Quan and to push the evolution of Chinese martial arts through the implementation of modern training methods and technology. To this end, he has also established an online learning program for Baji Quan named Bai Ji Shu, the links to which are in the show notes. So with that, I give you Vincent Mei. Okay, welcome to the Drunken Boxing Podcast, Vincent Mei. Very happy that we finally got around to doing this. I've known you online for a bit of time, but never met you in person. Seen some of your stuff, liked a lot of it, and I thought it would be a great discussion to get your backstory, your experiences, etc. So welcome.
Thank you, Byron. And we, exactly. We have known each other for quite some time online and through the Facebook groups, and we chatted privately from time to time, but never meet each other. Would love to meet you someday,
Hopefully soon.
maybe after the lockdown. Yes, yes, and an honor to be invited here.
Okay, great. So for the listeners, do you want to give a little bit about your background, who you are, etc.?
Yeah, sure. I'm Vincent Mei, and AKA, I have a very bold nickname. I've just been using it since I ever started practicing Baji Quan. Shamelessly call myself Baji King. So that's my nickname as my friend Lobius. But yeah, I'm part of the Wutan system, and I'm a Tan generation coach, and belongs to the New Jersey branch. Yeah, Wutan is a larger martial art organization originated from Taiwan. And yeah, I study under Master Chen Chang-Lin, and unfortunately he passed away about 10 years ago. And yeah, and I have a YouTube channel that is representing Wuhan, New Jersey, as well as some other social media platforms as well. And recently started Bai Ji Shu, which is online Baji Quan learning platform, and so far so good.
Very good. Very good. Wutan, I've actually seen, because I have a brother-in-law, he lives in New York, and I've gone a couple of times to visit him over the last 5-6 years. And actually very close to him, I would say from his apartment building, he lives in Flushing. So very close to him, maybe 1-2 blocks away, I remember driving past a place that had a Wutan sign out the front. It was, so I didn't actually realize there were so many branches in the States. Is it quite widespread in the USA?
Yeah, I mean, it started out with San Francisco was first. That was when my Shibo, Xu Ji, Adam Shu,
Adam
he
Shu.
started the first one. Yeah, Adam Shu, that's quite a famous name
Yeah.
in our industry. And then LA, New York, Toronto. Yeah, so yeah, there are a few places, and also Ohio. Um, New York was New York branch was established by my shifu back in the 80s when he came to the States to obtain his PhD degree in computer science. And yeah, that's when he started that, and then later on he started Wuhan, New Jersey.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, they're fair. I mean, generally they're next to each other in terms of location, New Jersey and New York. So that makes sense. Are most of the Wutan branches established in the States by students of Adam Shu?
Uh, Not quite. Most of them. So Wuhan is a large organization, as some of you may know. When some large organization come with a lot of complex politics, and Adam Shu has a lot of students, and then mainly because, how should I put it? Let me backstep a little bit. It was Shu Yuzhang. You guys know that name. That's also another huge name in the praying mantis world. So Shu Yuzhang is also my shibo. He had many students.
Just for the listeners,
and then,
some of them won't know. Shibo is martial uncle, so it's the same generation as your teacher, but not your teacher. So one of
yes,
his martial brothers.
correct.
Yeah.
And all of them study under Grandmaster Liu Yunqiao. Okay,
Yeah.
Grandmaster Liu Yunqiao, and he was the founder of Wutan.
Yeah.
So Adam Shu, my teacher, my shifu, and Shu Yuzhang, and other so-called Wu generation masters, they study under Liu Yunqiao. And then when Shu Yuzhang left Taiwan to go to Spain and Venezuela to start Venezuela Wutan and Spain, Barcelona Wutan, he basically left a lot of students back in Taiwan. And then those students were then learned under Grandmaster Liu Yunqiao. But Liu Yunqiao was very conservative, and he treated this sort of a generation lineage very importantly. So he shouldn't teach these sort of skip a generation student. So he made all these students to Bai Shi to become disciples under my Shibo Xu Ji. So that's why a lot of these so-called my elder brothers, they're all Xuji's disciples on our lineage book. And a lot of these people, spread around the world, and many of these branches, they will be claiming that in terms of the lineage, they are under Xuji or Shuizang, but a lot of them learn directly under Liu Yunqiao.
Okay. Actually, I've had
Yeah.
something similar happen with a well, he's not a he would be considered my shidi, my younger martial brother, but he's not because he actually studied. He did, but his in terms of his generation of Bai Shi, he Bai Shi to one of my Shige, one of my older brothers. Same reason.
Oh,
He
okay.
studied with my teacher. This boy actually lived in the same apartment building as my teacher, so it's his neighbor. But because of generation age differences and generation hopping, this kind of thing that you mentioned, my teacher didn't let him buy shirt to him, but made him buy shirt to one of us, one of his students, because
Yeah, just to make it legitimate. Yeah.
yeah, but
Yeah.
also because I mean it's and you see it quite common nowadays. You see these people coming out like, "Oh, I was X and X's disciple." Meanwhile, there's like a 50-year age difference. You're like, we know that's not how things
Yes.
worked. We know that's that,
Yeah. Yeah.
and that's not how things work. You wouldn't have been that teacher's disciple. You wouldn't have because it would screw up that generation's
Exactly.
the whole setup if he allowed somebody that's he's got his sugar is 30 or 20 years older than him. It doesn't work. So that's quite
Yes.
common. It's
Yes.
quite
Exactly.
common. Yeah.
Yeah. Pretty common.
Yeah. Yeah. So Shu, I actually met Adam Shu in Taipei. I want to say
Hmm.
2016, maybe 2017. I spent an afternoon with him. We had some tea. Very interesting guy. Very
Yeah. Nice
he's
guy.
nice guy, but also he's not scared to speak his mind, which I liked because we agreed on a lot of topics. And I was there doing some work specifically for with a local wushu organization, which is the Guoshu Federation. Actually, even though they call themselves
Okay.
the Wushu Federation, it's still basically a branch, or it's within the Guoshu Association there, and they were trying to host a Universiad. I don't know if you remember, this happened in Taipei, like in 2018. It's like the World University Olympics, basically, and they wanted to put
Oh,
wushu
okay.
in
I,
there.
I think. Yeah, I think it's isn't it hosted? It's an event, right?
So it's a multi-sport
Isn't
event.
it?
It's actually, in fact, if I recall correctly, it's the biggest sporting event after the Olympic Games. So it's a big event. It's like university students from around the world in many, many sports. So it's like a month long.
Oh, like a 世大运, right?
Exactly that. That's
Is
exactly
it
what
like?
it is. So I was
Yes.
I was the technical
Yes.
delegate. I was the technical delegate for Wushu. So I had to
Interesting.
go through many times to help with the setup and check the venues. And we went to the Wenhua Daxue, which is up on the hill, up on the mountain. And they
Yeah, they have a Wushu major. Yeah.
yeah, so they really wanted to host the event. They really wanted to host the event out of just out of history and cultural aspect. They've had wushu there for such a long time. It's such an important location, and unfortunately, their venue was just way too small for us to use. And we tried everything we could to try and make it
Oh,
work.
wow. Okay.
It was impossible. So we ended up using a venue in Taoyuan, which technically
Mm.
would be outside of Taipei, I guess. I don't know, but it was so far away. It was like an hour's
Yeah.
bus ride every day, one way from our hotel to the venue. But it was big enough.
Oh no. Yeah.
It was the same venue judo used. We actually had our event directly after judo, so that
Oh,
was.
nice.
But it was nice because the various groups of people that were assisting, because it seems to me that the Taiwan Guoshu Association it's quite volunteer based, if you know what I mean. I mean, there's a family that seems to
Yes.
run it, but most of the people that help out,
Yep.
it's volunteer, and it's because they actually care about
Yes.
Chinese
Yes.
martial
Well, of course.
arts. Yeah.
Yeah, Chinese martial art in Taiwan is not heavily. I mean, there's some fundings, some
Yeah.
helps from the Department of Cultural Preservation, but not nearly comparable to what China is doing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, let's also, for me, it's about like, for me with martial arts, I prefer sincerity over being put in a position because you're being put in a position. So I really like to work with people that are sincerely involved because they have a passion and a heart and a vested interest in the activity, as opposed to somebody who's put there simply because he was appointed there. So for me, I way prefer working with amateurs who are genuinely loving the art than a more structured, professional, formal person that's put there by some government and he's been transferred from, I don't know, swimming. Now he used to be in swimming, and before that he was in ping pong, and now he's in wushu. I'm like, well, what do you know about this? You don't know anything about Chinese martial arts.
Yeah, I think
So
in one of our previous conversation you did mention about that. That was quite interesting.
yeah, so I really enjoyed some of the people that were trying to help and volunteer and work on this event. And all of them that I met, they were like, oh, this one practices Bagua, this one practices like Bai He, this one practices Wuzu. There were a lot of Wuzu people. And it was,
Yeah.
yeah, it was they were very nice people. I had a good time. But why I mentioned Adam Shu was the person I was with, who was one of the people from the Wushu organization, right? And Adam Shu met us and we had tea for an afternoon, and Adam Shu and we were just chatting, and I really enjoyed it because Adam Shu just let him know exactly what he thought of the direction of the wushu sport that it was going, and he even wrote he came to the afternoon tea with a little, like a Wenjiang, like a thesis that he wrote,
Yeah.
a critical thesis, and he
Oh my
gave
God.
it to the guy. And the guy afterwards, and I won't mention names, but the guy afterwards was like, "Oh, that guy," and what he was saying, I just tore up his paper and threw it in the bin after reading a few pages. I'm like, "Why did you do that?" I said, "Why did you throw it away?" He said, "Because it was highly critical." I said, "We need criticism. Don't you think we need criticism? Don't you think you need to listen to what people think? And maybe it's valid." These people,
Yeah,
anyway.
that definitely sounded like my uncle Shiji. I'm not too close with him. I also met him just two times,
Yeah.
and yeah, he. But obviously, he's one of the eldest person in our organization, and there obviously I read a lot of his books, his thinking, and also people talk about him, and I know I'm good friends with a lot of his disciples as well. And from what I know is exactly that. Ever since he's even from my master, even from my teacher, when he described this elder brother, it's always ever since the Shibo Adam Su was very young, he was already a very critical writer in the martial arts sort of a scene in Taiwan, and he's definitely not afraid to speak his mind back then, and seems like it's still the same till today, which I respect in many extent. Yeah.
Yeah, well, we had a lot of things. I mean, I was trying to make a lot of the criticisms that he was raising were things that I had raised before. A lot of the changes and things I was trying to get done while I was inside there were the same things that he was commenting on being problematic, right? So we really had a good time chatting because we agreed on so much, So we liked each other quite a lot.
Right.
I don't think the third person that was
That's
sitting
great.
there with us enjoyed the conversation as much as we did, though. Yeah. So maybe you can give a little bit of background. Again, I think for some of the listeners maybe who aren't aware, they might be thinking that you're saying Wutan as in Wudang, as in mountain, but it's not that. It's something
Oh,
else. So
yeah, yeah,
maybe
yeah.
you can give a
That's
bit of
often.
some history about
Yeah,
that whole thing.
that's definitely oftenly mistaken. So Wudang is a mountain, and it's also a name of a style. Wudang San, and then also from a lot of martial fiction and novel. That sort of becomes the equivalent counterpart of Shaolin, right? So
Yeah.
everybody heard of that name, and many movies are named after Wudang, right?
Yeah.
Wudang style, and then Wutan is different. There's Wentan, Wutan. So Tan means society, a place, right? So when we describe somebody who's in the industry, so and so is the best in the tennis industry, right? So, or so and so is the best in the computer industry or metaverse, whatever. And Wentan, Wutan, Wutan is the martial arts scene, martial arts society. So that was a name of a magazine actually that
Okay.
started in the 70s. So that's when Grandmaster Liu saw sort of the future of the martial arts scene, and he was very worried about the direction where it's going. So he started mainly because of all the movies, and there was a huge trend about all these production of all these martial art movies, and then people starting to have false recognition of what traditional Chinese martial arts are. So he decided to start a magazine. So it's called Wutan.
Okay.
And Xu Ji was a writer, so he basically used a lot of his early disciples to be some of the early writers for this articles, authors for a lot of these articles, submissions, and also involve a lot of the famous martial artists at the time, from Xing Yimen or Tong Bei. He has a lot of good friends, in the martial arts scene. So that was the magazine. But as smart, as intelligent as Grandmaster Liu was, he was not a business person. So really quickly that magazine, ran out of budget, ran out of basically his retirement fund from all the contribution that he did to the government, to the presidential bodyguard. So for those of you who doesn't know who Liu Yunqiao was, he was the probably one of the, if not the first, he's probably equivalent to whoever is the first. He's probably the most popular martial artist in the recent history. He is the disciple of Li Shuwen, the god of spear, Li Shuwen, and also he was and he served under the KMT Kuomintang, secret service, to fight against the spies from Japan during the Sino-China War. Also fought against the Mao Zedong, and then he went to Taiwan with the government. And so he actually was his code name was 001. So he was like, instead of 007, he's 001.
Yeah, he's six steps ahead of 007.
He was the original. But yeah, so he was actually assigned as for secret service and also for assassination, especially that was his work. And yeah, so that was him. And then when he retired, so obviously he got some retirement fund, but then he threw it all into the magazine. And then then later on, with the help of my Shifu and Xu Ji Shibo, and they converted this magazine, who ran out of business, into a martial arts school. Okay. So that sort of became Wutan Martial Art Development Center. And at the time, like I said earlier, when there were a lot of students from Zhang, and after Zhang left Taiwan to Venezuela and Spain, all those students were gathered. They were all almost like without a teacher, just left there, and then they kind of gathered together in Wutan to train under Liu Yunqiao, but Bai Shi under Xu Ji. So they will continue to able to learn, and all of those elder brothers now became all of the branches, the responsible for a lot of the branches around the world, in Taiwan as well.
Okay. And is that where you started, in Taiwan?
No, I started in New Jersey, actually. Okay. So when my teacher left New York, he came to New Jersey to start New Jersey Wutan. On the first day he opened his door, I was the third one who stepped into the door.
Oh, very cool.
So that's why later on when when we become Bai Shi, so I'm the third one under him out of the 13 disciples.
Very cool. Very cool. And my teacher used to talk about Li Shuwen as well. He's well known here in China, of course, especially for his spear prowess and skills. And I remember my teacher telling me something to the effect of Li Shuwen apparently used to almost pray to his spear. It was like
Yes.
It was something very special. He treated it like a spirit of its own. This was.
Oh yeah, totally.
Yeah.
he would, when he walked into a restaurant, he would very well place his spears on the corner or by the wall, against the wall first, and then he would basically show his respect, pray at it before he have his meal.
Yeah. That's basically what my teacher told me. And another thing that I might be quoting it slightly incorrectly, but it was a story as well that he told me that he would wake up in the middle of the night, whether it was for any reason, like, okay, you wake up, you need to go to the bathroom or whatever, and then he would do some spear techniques, and then go back to bed. And it was something that my teacher told me that kind of affected me,
Yeah.
because I picked up a habit from that story. I kind of adapted it myself, that I would put my taganza, my big spear, I'd put it in the walkway.
Yeah.
Between, if I'm working like in the middle of the day on the computer, I put my big spear on the floor in the walkway between the room with the computer and the bathroom. So if I need to go to the bathroom, I pass over the spear, and whenever I pass the spear, I will do X amount of some basic technique, and it became a habit.
Yeah.
So I put it on the floor specifically, so when I walk past it, I'm like, all right, no excuse. Here it is. Do 10 repetitions, do 20 repetitions of something, then go to the bathroom and go back. Yeah.
That makes two of us.
Oh, really? Yeah. You see, it's the only way.
Yeah. Yeah. So definitely. Yeah, Li Shuwen was a very interesting character. But funny enough, like it may have something to do with Wutan, like the culture that we teach about the. I know a lot of people doesn't like the terminology Wu De, right? So, but at least that's what we're really care about in Wutan. So Li Shuwen is a character where we rarely talk about the other than his skill and the way he practiced his dedication to martial art and his skills, obviously. But like his personality, and also the sort of his action and his aggressiveness, personality. So something that we don't condone. But still, he is the god of spear, and he inspired, us in every day. He influenced, like generations after him, the way we practice, the way we think, that's still, significant.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like I said, I'm not even from a Baji or lineage connected to yours at all, and simply because of these old tales about the guy. My teacher is a Xingyi practitioner, would repeat these stories to me. And he would say this is, because of course spear is just very important to us as well. So my teacher would be, this is the way we should be. This is the real spirit of a a practitioner. And I was like, yeah, that's quite interesting to hear. Very interesting. Yeah.
Yes. And he used to, because he trained Liu Yunqiao since Liu Yunqiao was 8 years old, and till he was 18 or 19 years old. So, and then Liu Yunqiao came from a wealthy family, so they were wealthy enough to hire a famous teacher on a daily basis, live in their house, and to teach Liu Yunqiao daily for 10 years straight. And we hear a lot of story about how Liu Yunqiao growing up was taught by Li Shuwen, and it was almost it's not almost, it was child abuse. It was really it's almost like cruelty. So he would say things like, he would wake up in the morning and he said, Yunqiao, with a heavy accent, right? And then he was like, stand there, and then he would just he was asked Liu Yunqiao to practice Da Qiang. And then anything that he was wrong, he would stand on the side, and he used one hand to use Da Ganzi to just 戳他的, like just to hit Liu Yunqiao in different parts where he did it perfectly.
Right. Oh, yeah.
So he would often, like every day, he would go to bed with bruises and things like that, and for the whole year he did nothing but just 蹲步双身 with like 2 legs, 2 feet together, just do the squatting, just like that. Yeah. And interesting training method, but that's what makes good disciples.
Apparently so, right? I mean, I think in today's day and
Yep.
age, a psychologist might tell you, well, actually, what you're doing here is blah, but it was a different time, different society, different way of life. It's hard to judge that by today's standards in any shape or form, so.
Oh yeah, tell me about it. Yeah.
So what is it like with you? I mean, are you teaching? Are you teaching where you are do you have a physical school as well as online, or are you just teaching by other means?
I had a physical school. I used my office. Like those of you who watch my YouTube before the pandemic, you see this like, nice loft space, like, high ceiling with a staircase behind. That was my office. And I just use the office after 6 o'clock, every Wednesday. So in the morning, it's a marketing agency. At night, after 6 o'clock, it's a wuguan. So
Nice.
I taught a few students there. And then after the pandemic happened, then obviously I lost the office space because there's no point keep paying the
Of
rent.
course.
Then I'm like, what do I do? So I start teaching using Zoom, which I never believed would work.
Yeah.
But apparently it worked, and then that also opened up a lot of geographic barrier.
Of course.
Then I started to have students from Ohio, out of states, but in Canada, from various different places. But however, it was still limited by time zone. So if I teach on Sunday morning, people from the West Coast cannot join. That would be like 4 a.m. in
Of
their
course.
time.
Yeah.
And I like to keep my classes early, so I like to screen people like that. So my classes starts at 8 o'clock in the morning, Sunday morning. So whoever will join, I can kind of think they really love this stuff and they care.
Yeah.
And so these West Coast students are kind of like, I don't have any students from the West Coast at the time. So that's why it sparks the later on the Bai Ji Shu, because that's like, online lesson, not Zoom, not a live Zoom lesson. So now we have
Pre-recorded.
people from all over the world learning. Yes, pre-recorded, but with personalized feedback.
Yeah, yeah. I run a similar kind of thing as well. Also started.
Yeah, I noticed.
Just after the pandemic.
Did you just started that?
I started it a year ago, just maybe a year and 5 months or so. It's been going, and yeah, it's a very similar thing. It's a lot more effective in terms of breaking geographical barriers because there's no time zone requirement, and I can take time like focusing on what I want to emphasize in terms of technical instruction. So, sometimes when you're doing it live, there's a limitation with the camera setup, with the angles and whatever. But when you've got time to pre-record it, you can re-record 5-6 times from a different angle to make sure they can see some small detail. And then edit, of course, takes longer to produce, but the final product is a lot more.
But you do it once.
Yeah, it's a lot better for their
you
learning.
Do it once.
Yeah. So I do a similar thing. Of course, it's also really nice. I mean, I have a couple of people that do Zoom classes as well. And that's also quite nice because it's like real-time feedback that you can give them. And then, of course, if you meet people in real life, it's even better. But, the world is kind of different since COVID.
Exactly. New York is pretty much open since like the middle of last year or the fourth quarter of last year.
Yeah.
And we obtained a space here in New York Chinatown, and so we do have 2 in-person classes on Sunday morning.
Oh, okay.
And it's been good. Yeah, so we have online classes. We have in-person classes on Sundays.
So you drive through every morning from every Sunday from New Jersey to New York.
Oh, so that's another thing. I live in New York City for like over 10 years already.
Okay.
It's just because my Shifu started in New Jersey, Wutan, and that's where I learned New Jersey Wutan. So after he passed away, a couple of our brothers, continued to carry on the school. And then, life goes on, people have to move around, then I was the only one left in the area. So I continued to carry the school in my office, which was in New York City.
I see.
But we still keep the name as New Jersey, but it's like pretty close.
I see. Where in New Jersey was it?
It's in this town called East Brunswick.
Oh, okay.
It's like in a central New Jersey. Yeah.
I've heard of New Brunswick. Is that the same
Yeah,
thing?
it's right next to it. Yeah, New Brunswick is where Rutgers University is,
Yeah.
and yeah, the State University of New Jersey, and East Brunswick is right next to it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's quite a well-known grappler who has a school in New Brunswick, Gary Tonin. He was one of John.
Oh,
He was
I didn't know.
John Danaher. I'm sure you've heard of this guy. He's one of the
Yeah.
most renowned coaches in grappling and jiu-jitsu right now. And he would say
Yeah.
that Gary Tonin was his best student. And I think Gary's been teaching in New Brunswick. He started fighting in 1FC recently as well, but I think he teaches out of New
Oh,
Brunswick. So interesting place.
nice.
Interesting place. So, could you tell me a little bit more about the system of Wutan and its content and curriculum, etc.?
Yeah, Wutan system. There's course system and also added system, right? So Liu Yunqiao it all started from Liu Yunqiao sort of his life martial art journey. And so he started out as a very sick boy, just not healthy.
Yeah.
So, like as I mentioned before, his family was quite wealthy, so they have a bodyguard,
Okay.
helping out in the family. So that bodyguard was Mizong Quan, a practitioner.
All right. Lost track boxing.
So yeah, so Mizong Quan, so that was what he taught Liu Yunqiao when he was like 5 years old, and just to improve his health condition, just to exercise. And from there, he taught him like Taiji Quan and Mizong Quan. And even till now, we don't have a clear lineage tracking of Zhang Yaoting. So his name is Zhang Yaoting. He's a Hu Wei. He's like a bodyguard of the guard for the family.
Right.
So that's what he taught him. But we don't know where his lineage is, like which lineage of Mizong Quan it is.
I see.
But however, maybe Liu Yunqiao was too young at the time, so he can't even comprehend all that stuff.
Right.
So, but anyway, so when he was 8 years old, Li Shuwen came into the picture. So he basically hardcore trained Baji Quan for 10 years. When he was 19 years old, Li Shuwen, as the undefeated, champion of the northern 5 states, so he took his disciple around to challenge to try Shishou, right? So very quickly, Liu Yunqiao earned a title of Shandong Xiao Ba Wang, right? So he was also undefeated.
Right.
In the province of Shandong. But one morning he saw this teacher, this old man, practicing this weird boxing style with hook hands. So he went up there and challenged. He was 18 years old and he got his ass kicked.
Oh, good.
So that was right. So no longer Xiao Ba Wang anymore. So he got his ass kicked by this 六合堂门的一个高手. It's a high hand.
Right.
So his name is Ding Zichen. Ding Zichen.
How old was he at the time?
Ding Zichen is his... Who?
The
Liu Yunqiao?
No, the older gentleman.
Ding Zichen.
Yeah.
Oh, Ding Zichen should be in his 60s or approaching 70s.
Oh, okay. So that's quite. I mean, that's quite a common thing you hear back in those days about some young, skilled person meeting some older person and then getting his ass kicked. I mean, it's more common than people think.
Right. So he got his ass kicked. So he started learning under him for a little bit. And then at the time, that was a chaotic time in China. So there were a lot of warlords, right? So warlords hires famous martial artists to train their armies.
Yeah.
So Li Jinglin is one of the warlords.
Yeah.
And then he hired, and he's also himself is a very famous
Practitioner.
swordsman.
Yeah. Sword saint.
Yeah, sword saint, Jian Xian, right? Sword saint. He's really good at, really famous from his sword skills. So, and then he has acquaintance, not acquaintance. He has a friend, Zhang Xiangwu. So Zhang Xiangwu was also Li Shuwen's disciple, one of Li Shuwen's disciples. So when Li Shuwen took Liu Yunqiao around, he basically stayed at these compounds from these different warlords, military base, for free. And from there, Zhang Xiangwu taught this Xiao Sidi, Taiji Quan, Kun Wu Jian. So
Jian,
those are things from his Kung Fu, but yeah, Kun Wu Jian and Taiji Quan,
right.
Yangshi Taiji Quan.
Okay.
Right, and then when he was in Shandong Yantai, he also got introduced to Gong Bao Tian.
Okay.
Gong Bao Tian is quite a big name in Bagua. Yeah, Bagua practitioner. Quite a big name in the Bagua Zhang.
Yeah.
So he got introduced to learn under Gong Bao Tian. So he basically stayed with Gong Bao Tian for 1 year in Yantai. He basically, because he's wealthy again, like so, he basically paid his due with a lot of opium as his tuition to learn under Gong Bao Tian. And also, not to mention, he is Li Shuwen's disciple. So Gong Bao Tian wouldn't be slacking teaching Li Shuwen's disciple, right?
Yeah.
So that 1 year, Liu Yunqiao learned quite a bit of Bagua Zhang. I mean, there's a lot of discrepancy, a lot of questions about Liu Yunqiao's Bagua. You probably heard of some of those sayings. But I was also myself was doubting, how good can our Bagua system be, right? Because Liu Yunqiao only stayed with Gong Bao Tian for 1 year. But then after I started training in our system of Bagua Zhang, it's legit. It's legit.
Okay.
So with that said, Liu Yunqiao, when he started, so his core style is Mizong Quan, Baji Quan, Liu He Tanglang Quan, and Bagua Zhang. Okay. So those are his 4. Oh, and Pigua was also from, so 5 of those. Baji, Pigua, Mizong, Bagua, and Liu He Tanglang.
Right.
So those became the core style of Wutan. And then when he started Wutan, his goal is to preserve this dying art. He sees that, the rate of the direction where this is going, this thing is going to go extinct. This art and knowledge is going to go extinct. So he did his best to collect various different styles. So he had a lot of friends in the Taiwan martial art scene. So he is a very good friend with a lot of Xingyi grandmasters like Sang Danqi or Gong Bao Zai. In the Gong Bao Zai is Gong Bao Tian's nephew.
Right.
And then also other like Babu Tanglang Quan, Wei Xiao Tang, like they're in Han Qing Tang and and Shuai Jiao master as well.
Han Qing Tang was Mei Hua and Mei Hua, maybe Cha. You could call it Mei Hua Cha, and Nanjing Guoshu Guan curriculum as well.
Yes.
So,
yeah. So he tried to, and then they exchange students. So all those masters send their students over to Wutan, and then Wutan sends students over under them to study their art. So with the goal is to preserve all these styles. So that's why Wutan has Chen Si Taiji Quan from Du Yueze. Wutan has Tongbei Quan. Wutan has a lot of these, especially praying mantis. Praying mantis basically came from, I'm talking about 7-star, Mi Men, Qi Xing, and Babu Tanglang. So all these Tanglang Quan came from Su Yizang. Yeah, Su Yizang was already a very established praying mantis practitioner before he went under studying under Liu Yunqiao.
Right.
So he brought in a lot of these praying mantis. So all those students that he taught, all rooted in praying mantis. So Wutan has all these systems.
Didn't he create a something that he called Baji Tanglang?
Baji Tanglang is his school. Is the name of his school.
Okay.
And it's just called Baji Tanglang. And then there's some complicated history with him, so I'm not going to get into the detail of that. So that's he has Baji Tanglang system, but it's still it's kind of combining, his knowledge of Baji Quan as well as his knowledge of praying mantis together.
I see.
Yeah. So we have all those systems together. But then my teacher, Chen Chang-Lin, that's my shifu. He had an interesting history and family background. So he got a lot of I don't want to say special treatment, but he basically grew up around Liu Yunqiao's house is because my teacher's father was also so-called a spy. Like
Okay.
he also worked in the Secret Service, but he mainly took care of the British affair.
I see.
So he was based in London, but him and Liu Yunqiao they were colleagues, so they know each other. So my teacher was sort of a special kid, and he's also very young at the time. So he was this little kid running around the house, and close family friends. So, but my teacher realized, and he didn't want to promote. He treat praying mantis as a outside edit style, so he only wanted to promote the five core style. So that's
I
why
see.
we in the New Jersey time we especially promoted these training these five styles. When he first started New York Bhutan, he taught a lot some praying mantis, and also Su Yizhang stopped by New York Bhutan as well. So he also taught a lot of praying mantis material. That's why if you see praying mantis that's why if you see New York Bhutan, they basically is very heavy on praying mantis.
I see.
Yeah.
So how do you teach your system?
So
And
that would
I mean, what is the progression to go through all of this content? What do you usually start, and what is the progression like?
yeah. So my teacher, he was very conservative, right? So he, according to his system, it would take a long time. Like for example, I had to go through Changquan, a little bit of Talang Taiji Quan, Mizong Quan, basically everything that he has to offer before I even touch Baji Quan for about 7 years.
Okay.
So he was very traditional. But what's interesting was that he seeded in some of the highest level stuff since day one. He just didn't tell us. Things that we develop a habit over 7 years. So we're basically ready to go when he started teaching Baji Quan. But still, it took too long. And then when I am running the school now, carry on the school, I feel like, this thing is going to die out. I also feel very concerned about, this art. So I tried my best. I spent some time trying to condense the curriculum. So what I do is I also follow my teacher's sort of the core idea is that developing habits, good habits. So doesn't matter high level, low level, just habits. At the end of the day, these are all just, muscle memory,
Yeah.
how your biomechanic works and everything. So we just put that into, the foundation, and that's what we train with. But I designed a 2-year program. Basically, we started with this form called 综艺拳,
Okay.
but with the focus of Baji Quan development, right? So 综艺拳 is a very unique style. It's not a style. It's a unique form
Okay.
that it was created in 1986 for the military, Taiwanese military. This form was unique because it was led by Grandmaster Liu. He took basically all his friends at the time, all the grandmaster of the time from all the styles. They designed together this form. This is a short form, but it has the essence of Bagua Zhang, Suijiao, Baji, and Mantis.
Okay.
So it has all these different styles mesh into this form, which is very interesting. It's a simple form, very simple, but I don't think these grandmasters, they can hide, the depth of understanding and the depth of martial art. So this simple style has a lot to offer. So that's what we use to train the foundation. It's so simple that even armies we can mass train the army with it. You can train internal, you can train external combat. You can use a bayonet with it. So it has a lot to offer.
Okay. Sounds very
So we
interesting.
use this so we use it to train as our first form to train people. No matter you're an advanced student, someone who with previous experience, or someone who's a blank slate, I think they can gain and benefit from this form. So after that, we move into Da Baji, right? So that is the second form. So Baji Quan system go from Xiao Baji, Da Baji, Liu Dakai, Lian Huan Quan, and it goes like that. But when my teacher taught us, he left Xiaobaji, which is the first fundamental form, to the last.
Oh, okay.
And that's something that I carry on as well. So we teach Dabaji on the second as a second form. So with a couple of different considerations, so people can have fun, right? So when you learn these stuff, so you wouldn't be doing this dry squatting for 8 breath cycle every movement, so you wouldn't be, and also it wouldn't hurt your body. Xiaobaji was way too harsh, like you not only have to be talented, you also have to be physically gifted to sustain this foundation training, right? A lot of people got hurt, training Xiaobaji, so we put Dabaji in the second form, so people gain interest, like learn about Dabaji, they can do this cool form, and then learn about how things are being applied and used. So people have fun, gain some more interest into the Baji Quan. Then after that, we put Baji Quan aside. We train in Pigua. So Pigua Zhang. Then that's when we put Baji Quan aside. We don't touch Baji Quan for another 3 months. For 3 to 4 months, only Pigua Zhang. And then after that, we use Chen Taiji. Wutan has a very old style of Chen Si Taiji Quan.
Okay.
Du Yuezhe, Grandmaster Du Yuezhe at the time.
Yeah, I've seen his stuff.
Yeah, he himself wasn't I'm just going to say it, and I might piss off some people, but, it is what it is. Some people are talented, some people are not as talented. I think Grandmaster Du Yuezhe, he's probably not that talented, but he preserved this form, this style. Right. But this form, the materials are very authentic.
Okay.
You can see this is a good stuff, right? So, and then he learned from I may be mistaken, but he learned from Chen Fa Ke. Okay. But so that's his lineage. So from the status of the ranking, he is a generation, 2 generations above the Chen Xiaowang and the Sida Jinggang and Chen Jiagou.
I don't think we should be using the Chen Xiaowang as some sort of barometer for the be-all and end-all of Chen Taiji's, lineage and generations. Yeah, but, I mean, we know very well. I'm in Beijing, and Beijing has a very deep history with Chen Fa Ke and Chen Zhaokui. So, the stuff that comes out here, like, I mean, my teacher was very good friends with Feng Zhiqiang and these people. So, we have a different outlook. And honestly, I don't want to, it's not that I'm trying to talk bad about anything, but even me, when I first saw the Beijing lineages derived from Chen Fa Ke and compared it in terms of method, Shenfa, content, etc., it was far more refined from what I saw coming out of the villages. So,
Yes.
Yeah, it's a big difference.
There's a lot of complication with the government involved, and so you get it. Yeah. So this Chen Si Taiji Quan is a very, very raw. It's like a very raw style of you can see this is came from a long time. This is an old style. So we use it as a mesh to further to speed up, basically with the goal to speed up Baji Quan development. Okay. So that you have Dabaji, right? So Baji Quan is like fire, right? So it's like making a sword. So you put it under like hot temperature, and then you put it in cold water. Right. So cold water can be Pigua, but then these are too extreme. So hot and cold. So eventually, in the old days, you practice Baji Pigua. So kind of like you go the extreme, and slowly over time they become they mesh together. Right. So the yin yang becomes Tiaohe. Then in my curriculum, I use Chen Taiji to further that sort of bonding between the two styles. Then after that, I teach Xiaobaji, which is relatively fast. So this is like basically by the time of 19 months or 18 months, then you get to Xiaobaji. And from Xiaobaji, after Xiaobaji, basically you will be boosted with a lot of strength. And to if my student revisit what they learned before, they would feel completely different.
Okay.
And then now by the end of the 2 years of curriculum, they kind of get it, like, what is Baji Quan about? Then they can continue to learn, other materials in the system.
Okay. And
so that's how I teach.
Would you say your personal focus yourself is Baji as a core?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. And how do the weapons fit into this in terms of your curriculum, or even within Wutan in general?
Yeah, weapons is important because I believe, regardless, people say, empty hand come from weapon or weapon come from whichever comes first. I do believe in, after, no matter what happened, that the evolution is that weapon and empty hand, they kind of complements each other.
Of course, yeah.
It shouldn't be what comes first, what comes last. It may start it from weapon, but then when you say 500 years or 600 years ago in say Mingcao, right? You have all these farmers being collected, and then just say, okay, here's a spear, go fight, and then they train for 3 days. Like, how high of a technique can these guys have, right? So regardless, you start with weapon or what, you still need some of the foundation techniques and whatnot. You still need your body to drive the weapon, and so when weapon becomes empty hand, passing down, complication added to it, the sophistication, it becomes sophisticated because now you have fingers, you can grab, you can feel even more sensitively. So things becomes more sophisticated, and then you go back to weapon. Then it enhances the weapon's sort of execution. So I think they kind of go hand in hand. So weapon, we have in Wutan, we have a few weapons. We obviously have Da Qiang.
Yeah.
Right. So Baji Man Da Qiang, and we also have Kun Wu Jian.
Okay.
Kun Wu Jian, like I say, came from Zhang Xiangwu. So there's a funny story. So when Zhang Xiangwu met this young little brother, Liu Yunqiao, and he taught him Taiji Quan. Oh, this kid is so talented. Like, whatever I teach him, he gets it. So he teach him this Kun Wu Jian in the yard, and then Li Shuwen in the morning, he walked by, and he's like, okay, what is this you're teaching him? He's like, this is Kun Wu Jian. It's from Wudang San, whatever. And then Li Shuwen just say, okay, why don't you fight me? How can you fight people with this? So he picked up a stick, a tree branch in his hand, and then immediately he made Zhang Xiangwu. Zhang Xiangwu was already also quite a famous swordsman. So he dropped Zhang Xiangwu's sword. And Zhang Xiangwu continued to try, and same result happened. And then he asked Li Shuwen, it's like, what is this? What is this sword that you practice? And then Li Shuwen just laugh and say, this is Wu Ji Jian, right? But what it is was he basically put his Da Qiang into his sword, but with strength, with a lot of strength.
Yeah.
So later on, Liu Yunqiao put this essence into Kun Wu Jian, and then that became our Baji Jian.
I could just imagine what was going through his mind. He's like, what's the sword you're teaching my students? Sword? Spear. By Bing Zhi Wang. Let me show you something. Come over here.
Exactly. That was, yeah. I was cracking up when I read this passage. Yeah. So that later on became Kun Wu Jian Er Tang. So we have a Kun Wu Jian Er Tang, which is AKA the Baji Jian. So that is a sword form, a unique sword form, Chinese sword form that you see that actually has Fa Jin in there.
Very interesting.
So that we have Kun Wu Jian, which is more Wudang flavor, and then we have Baji Jian, which is Li Shuwen's creation. Then we have Miao Dao, Silu Miao Dao, that basically came from Nanjing Zhongyang Guoshu Guan.
Right, the Nanjing Guoshu Institute.
So, yes, which I love. I love this really short form. It's not the whole Miao Dao Yi Tang. It's not the whole form. these are very short 4 segments that it was obviously created to fight on the battlefield.
Yeah.
So I really love this material that we have. And then we have Bagua Men. All the Bagua weapon that we inherited are all the small, tiny little ones.
Okay.
So like Shuang Yue,
Yeah.
okay, Bagua Shuang Yue, the antler knives.
Yeah.
We have the Dian Xue Zhen,
The needles.
like the needles, and then the Shuang Gou, like the 2 hooks, the double hooks.
Right.
That's about, and then Gunfa, right? And then Gunfa, we also have a Baji Quan, which came from Li Shuwen. It's just dry form, dry drills. It's just dry drills.
Okay.
No form. And then it's a little similar to what you see out there with the Bian Gan, right? So the Baji Gan.
Okay.
So it's kind of similar to that, but with a full-length staff.
Oh, that's interesting.
And then we have this Gunfa called Fengmo Gun. Fengmo Gun, which is it's very very widely taught, and we also have a version of it. Our version came from the Sun Binquan's grandmaster that actually brought that Fengmo Gun into Wutan. So that's the Fengmo Gun version that we have.
Which are the characters for your Fengmo Gun? Which Feng and which Mo?
We are the wind. Mo is to grind.
Okay, wind grinding.
The windmill,
yeah.
wind grinder. Wind grinding. Yeah. Not the crazy demon.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and and then we have Pigua Dao, Pigua Shuang Dao. We have the Dan Dao, Shuang Dao, and I think that's about it.
No, I mean,
there may be some.
That's quite a lot of stuff already. I mean, if I just compare it, like I do Xingyi Quan and Bagua Zhang, Liang Sao, Bagua Zhang, and just those 2 systems. But I mean, my teacher teaches them as full systems, right? As he learned them, and even that, it's just too much. It's too much content. You know, you got to basically be.
It's a lot.
You got to do everything, review every day, make sure that you regularly cycle through the content. Otherwise, there's just too much content. Yeah. There's too much content. So.
I agree. Yeah. So there's no way. There's no way. I see what Liu Yunqiao is trying to do. But I think it's, I don't know, as much as we want to keep all these great stuff, but I think it's we have to go back to our core styles. I do think core style is manageable. The 5 systems, it's manageable by a person's lifetime.
Well, these are lifetime.
All these other things.
These are lifetime arts, and I mean,
exactly.
And what's it like with you? I mean, over here, you know what it's like. We train every day. If my teacher's teaching, we train every day. You mentioned that you like to use the 8 a.m. class as a way to check if the students are truly interested. I think a lot of Westerners would have some sort of a heart attack if they came here, because your teacher will expect you to be there like even earlier than that, like 7. And actually they don't realize it, that when they tell you be here at 7, they expect you to be there at like 6:30, because you should be there before the teacher, right? So so what is it like in the West? Because I understand that may be also why you had to somewhat condense your curriculum, because I don't think people are training every single day. They're not coming to class every single day. So
so the truth. Yeah, so the interesting thing is that in-person class, even our in-person class, I don't even think people practice during the week, right? They come to class, they train in class, they sweat, they feel good, I don't think it's... And then it wasn't until I start teaching on Zoom. A lot of people don't believe in Zoom teaching, but when I teach Zoom, I require them to submit homework. So they have to record their practice and send it to me. And then I look at them, and I look at them frame by frame, literally. Things that I cannot do in person. I cannot freeze time. But in videos, I can freeze frame. And I take screenshots. I draw diagrams on top of the people's screenshot. And then this method, it's a lot of work. It's very time consuming, but it does create results through. I don't even need to see these people like face to face. and the progression is there.
Yeah.
And I do think the practice homework makes a big difference. And these people, they can't just record, some random stuff. Like once you start recording stuff, they have to keep doing it until they feel good that they send it to them. And they watch it themselves.
Of course.
That's also another important factor.
Yeah.
So I do think this is working. The only weird thing is that, I cannot show you the jin. I cannot show you you cannot feel.
Yeah, you need to feel that of someone.
The power. Right. So that is something that I'm still planning on to overcome, to throw like seminars, internal seminars or things like that, just to meet up and train things like that specifically.
I do the same thing. I've got my online learners. They send a video every month, and then I'll record a video for each one of them. So I'll watch their stuff, make notes, and then record one back for them, telling them what to fix, what to pay attention to. But the thing is, like, a lot of people are, I don't know, some people are very keen. I've got a few people that are very keen. They do this every month. But then there's some people that are not so keen, So I can't force them. But, it's for their own development and benefit if they do. Because like you said, just watching yourself already, the way you think you look and the way you actually look are always two different things. So when you watch yourself, that's already one step.
Watching, yeah. So that's interesting, right? So I first started with the method that I told you about, which is I take screenshots. I watch it, I take screenshots, I freeze frame, I draw these diagrams on top of it. So they see themselves, and then with these diagram lines overlapping their structure. That worked out pretty well. But then the student number gets more and more. I run out of time. So recently I start doing what you're doing, which is I collect in batches. So whoever submit homework today, I will do one quick recording and just to consolidate all the feedback together in one video of me showing them. But that's me showing them. How is it different from the video that they're watching from the class, right? So they miss that, sort of comparison. I'm curious to see what happens because I just started this.
Okay.
This self-recording feedback instead of the freeze frame diagram thing. So, I think there are pros and cons, but I definitely see that over the past 2 years, I see the value of taking screenshots and draw diagrams all over it.
Yeah.
And
I think multiple methods, because we have so many tools we can use, apart from being in person. But there's so many methods that I think multiple methods of instruction are going to actually lead to good results. So video feedback, maybe sometimes you have something specific, you draw a diagram, so yeah.
And the funny thing, I think, is that when you don't have it, you treasure it more. So I sometimes find my online students trains harder than my in-person students. So they like, I have this student from the Philippines. Like, I have this platform, so it tracks like how many hours these people watch the video and train. This guy is the only person who's in Philippines, and he is like a fifth of all the accumulated time from the US and London and UK together. And he's just a single person, and combined UK and US, that's like at least 30 people are from US and UK.
Right.
And this guy single-handedly, he's 1/5 of the dedication of those guys.
I think you found your Wu Chi in the Philippines, so that's okay. We all need. I'm one. I'm sure you are one too. So that's what you need. Yeah.
Yep. No, but it's good. It's good. I think these a lot of these not foreign, but like all these remote students are very dedicated, which is quite rewarding. Quite rewarding.
Well, you cherish what you can't easily get more than somebody that gets it easily or has easy access to it. So I suppose that's part of the reason. That is true. So yeah.
Yeah.
What was your training like I'd like to ask, because I'm a Bagua practitioner. So what is the Bagua curriculum or content, or what do you guys teach within your Bagua side of things?
So Wutan the Bagua, we have the core systems. We have all start from the 浑元庄. Okay, 浑元庄 is just the basic sort of the 8 movements.
Okay.
And then we have the 八木掌, which
8
all the system has the same thing. Yeah. Yes. 八木掌, I think that's the only thing that is like consistent across all different Bagua lineages, and everything else is different. Then 八木掌, and then we have the 两仪掌, 四象拳, Bagua Zhang. So 两仪掌 is the 小开门.
Okay.
And then 四象拳 is the Bagua, also called the Bagua 腿.
Right.
And then we have the Bagua Zhang, which is we have the 硬掌, right? Bagua 硬掌. Then we have the Bagua 64掌.
Okay.
And then we have the Bagua that has many names, Bagua 穿灵掌 or Bagua 连环拳.
Yeah.
And then we also have this sort of off-track Bagua 拳called 炮锤, Bagua 炮锤.
Well, that's interesting.
Which is also called the 先天Bagua 拳.
Okay.
So that's our entire Bagua system sort of material.
Your 64掌, your 64 palms, is it done on a circle?
Yes.
Okay, so yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, like you said, most of the styles have Bamu Zhang or Lao Ba Zhang, 8 mother palms or old 8 palms. And then from there, it kind of depends on the lineage. And so, I mean, for example, in my Liang style, you'll learn 丁式 Ba Zhang, which are static 8 palms with fixed upper body postures.
丁式 Ba Zhang.
Right, and
that's similar to the 浑元庄 we did.
Yeah, I was thinking.
That sounds like it's similar.
I was thinking it's the same thing. So, yeah, we just call it 丁式 Ba Zhang. And
right.
And then we go on to Lao Ba Zhang. So that's the old 8 palms, or the Bamu Zhang, 8 mother palms. And they vary. I mean, you go from like the first Di Zhang, which is called Chuan Zhang. It's very simple. It's basically walk the circle, do a couple of leading up movements into Chuan Zhang, which we pierce with the Niu Shi Zhang. We use ox tongue palms from Yin style, and then go the other way. But the second you go to the second palm, it immediately starts becoming very complicated. Like our second palm is called Gai Shou Zhang, which is covering, or Gai Zhang, covering palm, and it's got, like, if you compare it to the first one, there's a lot more technique and it's a lot more complicated, right? And anyway, so Bamu Zhang, if you look at its content, it's basically got almost everything in terms of technique in there. Almost all the Bagua techniques are in there. And then we have something called Lian Huan Zhang, linking palms, which is another version. There's some aspects of techniques that are not in Bamu Zhang that are in here. And that, I would say, is the main core. From there on, there's additional content. Like we have Ba Mian Zhang, which is 8 directional palms. And that's quite interesting because Ba Mian Zhang, you walk the circle, but then each line goes away from the center. It goes in the opposite direction. It goes out of the circle. So that's quite different to the other, like Lian Huan Zhang, etc., which is more focused on the center of the circle. This goes out of the center in the opposite direction.
Right.
And then, of course, the next one of our key things is what we call Liu Shi Si Shou. It's not Liu Shi Si Zhang. It's Liu De Quan. It's Liu De Quan's 64 hands, and they're Zhitang, they're straight line. And we consider these the application of the 64 methods, right? So
that's why they call the hands,
Right. And also it can be done by yourself or with a partner. So, and usually when you do it with a partner, if you're doing jia, you're doing the attacking, the partner who's doing yi, the responding, has to be more senior. He has to be more experienced than you because he needs to know how to feed you the right things. So if he knows how to feed you the right things, responding the right way, so it incites a reaction from you, and then that starts to build the habits. So that's I would say that's the core of the bare hand content, and we've got a whole bunch of weapons, and there's a lot of weapons like Gun Shou Dao, the big broadsword. We've got the Yuan Yang Yue, the Mandarin duck blades, which
Yuan Yang Yue,
and we've got the Rei, which look like tonfa, but they're blades. They've got chicken claws on them, and they look like.
Oh wow!
Yeah, they're very nasty weapons. I mean, I'd hate to be in an actual fight with somebody using real ones of those, because those things are sharp and pointy and hooky everywhere. Yeah, and then
Wow.
there's spear, there's staff, etc. One interesting thing about my teacher's spear is because he came from a Xingyi background and he had done so much spear, he wasn't very interested in
Uh-huh.
Bagua's spear because he found it to be inferior to Xingyi spear. So we focus in terms of spear, we focus more on Xingyi spear. And actually, I followed the same way. I trained the same way my teacher learned. I focused on Xingyi Quan for like a
Xingyi first, yeah.
like a decade before I started doing his Bagua curriculum. So yeah, and I'm happy for that because what you said earlier about the fire and the water and making a sword, and then they kind of meld together.
Yeah.
I think that kind of
Yeah.
happens with these two systems as well, with Xingyi and Bagua. It's quite
Yes.
interesting.
Yes. Totally.
So,
Totally.
yeah, very very interesting.
Yeah. And at the end of it's very interesting. I mean, my teacher passed away pretty young, and then what's interesting is that the funny thing is that we have a big organization. I get a lot of questions I get from my fellow martial relatives. They like to question me is like, oh, what did you learn with your teacher?
Uh-huh.
When he was alive. They like to teach that stuff because they're like, okay, so you learn from your teacher for about 12 years.
Yeah.
Or so, 13 years or so, 12 or 13 years or so, how much can you learn? And then he passed away in 2006.
Right.
And then ever since, you've been, maybe because I'm like, so like, a lot of people see me as a show off, on YouTube.
I think it's from your nickname.
But that I couldn't help. It's just like in my all my screen names. Like I was like 17 years old.
Oh, you see?
I read it. I play the video game Virtual Fighter.
Ah, okay.
And I just fell in love. I fell in love with the Baji Quan, and then I just say, okay, this was before I started learning under my teacher.
I see.
And then I bought a book from Chinatown, and I just trained with a friend. And then I call myself, my AOL screen name was Baji King.
I see.
So that just has been my screen name. Even in the advertising world, in the marketing world, people still call me, Baji King. so that was not meant to be. I mean, I did not. And later on, I have like really elderly, like Kung Fu brother, Kung Fu uncle, would be like, you call yourself Baji King, you must be very proud of your Baji Quan. Yeah.
Right.
But that was not meant to be.
Well, I have an email address that I made when I was around 16 or 17, and I've used it ever since, but I wish I could change it because it's so silly. I won't mention it because I don't want to give out my email address. But anyway, it's very similar idea to your Baji King name. So.
Like, who's this Baji King? Yeah.
Yes.
But,
you were saying that people asked you about what you actually learned.
Yeah. So people. Yeah. So my martial relatives like to ask me that question. They like to validate, right? So they like to like backtrack the timing and all that stuff. But what's really interesting, so this is a true story, is that's why as I'm getting older and practicing this stuff that I learned from my teacher for the longer time, the more I thought something was up, right? So something was different from the stuff that my teacher taught us. Mm-hmm. And because me and my brother, we have 13 brothers, and I think about 6 of us are still active, practicing and teaching. And the other 6 just move on with life. So 6 of us, we kind of spread out around the world. We're in different places. But then from time to time, we check in with each other. Our progress and progression are in sync over the past 20 years, 15 years.
Oh, very cool.
That was very interesting because our understanding of things and progression, timing, everything almost in sync in terms of our progression. And then we just continue to grow. And then we also have elder brothers from Taiwan, the headquarters. who also, from time to time, will also help us to catch up some missing materials. But those are just materials; those are just forms and stuff.
Right.
So when we learn the form and when we exchange idea with these elder brothers, we felt like, okay, we're not wrong, or this is the same way we have been progressing. So, which is quite interesting and quite amazing over time that we're starting to validate these all these things that my teacher taught us. Like I said, he starts seeding a lot of the habits since day one,
Yes.
and then just over time these things just marinates. Like just crazy.
Oh, that's very interesting. I mean, that's good. It's kind of, if you're all kind of, your teacher's gone, you're all over the place, but you seem to have a similar progression. It kind of speaks to
Yep.
your
No,
your teacher's teaching methodology, that it was successful and effective. So,
Yes.
that's a good thing.
Yes. So, like for example, I think there's a saying that you're the first form you learn is typically the most important form in the system, right? And there's a reason why he put Xiaobaji as one of the, not the last one, but like pretty behind, right? As a you have to spend some time to get to this first fundamental form. Yeah. So Xiaobaji from the appearance is pretty dry, right? So it's just a form. Anyone can learn this form in 20 minutes.
Yeah.
But it has a lot to offer, almost endless content to offer. But then if you put a beginner to train in this form, the stuff that this person can absorb from this form is very, very limited. But then if you leave it to the end, like for example, some of my more senior students, they recently completed Xiaobaji.
Okay.
And the feedback that I got, this is from in-person class, right? So the feedback that I got was that I would not have learned this form the same way I have learned if this was put in the beginning of the curriculum.
That's interesting.
And they actually, the feedback, I didn't ask them, they actually came back with this feedback, and they said, now I understand why you put Xiaobaji towards the end. So the level of absorption of the content is much greater when you leave this sort of so-called the fundamental content to the end.
Okay, that's an interesting way to look at it, and an interesting way to put it forward. Maybe, I mean, your teacher maybe realized that a long time ago. So did he ever explain why he put it at the end to you guys?
No, this was also the same way it was taught by Liu Yunqiao by some of the earlier students. So which I believe Adam Su and some of these earlier guys who also was trained in this sequence. And then later on, when Wutan established, the school established, then it went back to there's the Xiaobaji, Dabaji, like, and then it went back to the normal, quote-unquote, normal state, mono sequence.
That's interesting. I mean, I don't know have you had any interaction with other Baji lines from the mainland? I don't know if there's any other teachers around you that derive from Mengcun or other lineages of Baji around here.
A bit, a little bit. I mean, I'm online friends. I haven't met him. You probably know him, Stephen Ip. Master Stephen Ip. He's in Montreal. He is from the Wei lineage, Qinghuangdao.
Okay.
Lineage, and that is I call it the Li Shuwen middle age lineage, because there's in Tianjin there's a Huo style, right? Huo style Baji Quan. That's Li Shuwen's first student, Huo Diange.
Yeah.
That lineage came down, so we call that the early stage of Li Shuwen's teaching. Then this Qinghuangdao Wei lineage from Stephen Ip's lineage, that is the middle age, right, from the Wei Hongbing, Wei Howen brothers.
Right.
Then you have the Liu Yunqiao, which is Li Shuwen's, when he was teaching Liu Yunqiao, he was already at 70s. So 3 different stages in life, teaching and understanding of Baji Quan, which is quite different. So we did some like exchanging and look at other stuff and we talk about stuff as well. And I have this Kung Fu brother from Malaysia. So he is Malaysia Wutan student. he later on pursue. He's really good. He has a really solid foundation.
Mm-hmm.
He went to Changzhou
Right.
and to learn from Wu Lianzi's lineage. And then, so through him, I have some exchange and some like lenses into the Kaimen Baji Quan as well. Yeah.
And
So those are
what is
those are about it.
what
yeah.
do you see in terms of similarities, differences within your own, like you said, young age, middle age, and old age, and then also outside of this lineage?
The Li Shuwen
Yeah.
lineage.
What do you see?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting because right now there are a few major lineages of Baji Quan, right? So there's a Han Huachen. Han Huachen is a big name,
Mm-hmm.
right? So he's like, Bailey Nanhan, right? So there's his name was put against Li Shuwen's name at the time. So Han Huachen lineage, there's Lu Baochun Shifu, right? Lu Baochun, he has a lot of students in the Scandinavia
That's
area.
right.
And right, so I think his lineage is interesting because he has some. I'm making my own observation, right? So it could be wrong. So I don't want to like piss off anyone, but this is just from my angle. So I feel like Lu Baochen Shifu, his Baji Quan has some Taiji Quan essence in there.
Okay.
So and which is very unique because he uses the front foot to stomp. He stomp with the front foot, which utilize the secondary power, and which is interesting because he added this recoiling, right? He has this the hui can, right? He has this 产世劲
Right.
to reuse that power to put in really quick combat, so he can strike and then recoil, strike, recoil, strike.
Well, it's a
recoil.
similar concept
So
to
which
Xingyi.
is Xingyi,
Yeah,
exactly. So Baji Quan is different. Baji Quan is just everything goes out and doesn't come back, right? If I strike, it goes out. But you're in the center, so it explodes. It explode outward, and then you fire another explosion, It's like fireworks.
Yeah.
So and then you have the Wu Lianzi style, Wu Si Kaimen Baji Quan. I feel like that style is, in my opinion, is very combat driven. At least from Wu Shoufeng to, there's already 3 generations continuous, and the recently passed away Li Junyi Lao Shi, right? So they're already 3 generations. They're consistent, fairly consistent. I think a lot of people can call them, they do a lot of descriptions, a lot of saying, the war between, different lineages that call them fake or whatever. But from my observation is that they have a consistent 3 generations of very combative driven focus Baji Quan. And I can also, I'm also seeing that as a more of a, what Baji Quan was like.
Right.
More of a, it's a Changzhou, this really rural area. This is Baji Quan, right? Then you have the Li Shuwen lineage, which is really simplified. Like we don't have, Li Shuwen is this short guy. He's like, I don't know, like maybe 4'8", like below 5 foot.
Yeah.
Tall. So he didn't like the Qinna or any of these, like, anything that's a little bit flashy or requires hand techniques, he doesn't have. So his lineage of Baji Quan is extremely simplified. He utilized like, raw, like just power, right? So that's how he attacks. And then you have the early stage, which is Huo Dienge. That is the simplest. And then you have the middle range, which is in between. Our lineage of Baji Quan is softer.
Okay.
We also feel like it's because he was older. Anyone who's older, and then we have a lot of zhang, right? A lot of palm.
Yeah.
Utilize of palm. It's a lot of it's a lot softer in comparison to the other lineage. Some people in China would call us like 没力, the Baji Quan 没力, no power. Taiwan Baji Quan 没 power. Right. So our Baji Quan is softer. It could come from because Li Shuwen is already really old, and also Liu Yunqiao also heavily influenced by Bagua.
I was
So
gonna
our
ask
Baji
that.
Quan
I was gonna
has a
ask
lot of
if a lot of the influential change that you're seeing didn't come from Li Shuwen, but from Liu Yunqiao, and his experience.
yes, totally.
So
Totally. So that's also contribute a lot to the quote unquote softness. And then yeah, I think that's that. And you have the Qiu Baolong from Beijing. You have the Hu Yutao. He's also in Beijing, right?
yeah, I think so.
Hu Yutao 老师. Yeah, and then yeah, you have all these like combative driven Baji Quan all came from rooted back in the Wu Yanzi lineage. So that's why I think if you put all the Baji Quan people together, I think they can probably fight the most, to be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you have the you have the An Wu Shu, right? The An Baji.
No comment.
And that's the that's the harsh. I call that the Shaolin style.
Yeah, I'm gonna keep my mouth closed. You can say what you want there.
Shaolin Baji. That it's great. It's great.
Okay.
It's fantastic. Yes.
All right, good. All right, so what was it like? I mean, I don't know how much time you have, but I would. What was it like training with your teacher? What kind of a person was he, and what affected you in your life in training and outside of training?
Oh yeah, I was one of those like I came from Taiwan, and then I was one of those young Taiwanese sent away scholar, right? So I was sent out of Taiwan to study abroad at 12 years old, and well, my parents were staying in Taiwan to continue to make money, and so I didn't really grow up during my teenage year with my father.
Well, before you carry on, actually, I had a lot of friends growing up that were exactly like you.
In South Africa, right?
Yeah, South Africa was heavily Taiwanese up until a certain point. After a certain point, South Africa kind of shifted its connections to be more with the mainland. But my high school, I went to a Taiwanese government established high school. It was called Guoding.
Yeah,
that was the name of my high school. And even growing up before that in primary school, I was an immigrant, so all of my best friends were immigrants. They were the Taiwanese kids, and even in my building, my apartment building, up on the 5th floor, one of my best friends were two brothers, and the one younger brother was my age, and his older brother was a couple of years older. They were both in high school, but their parents were still in Taiwan. They were living alone in that apartment up there, and just getting the bus to school,
similar,
and studying, and that was so. I grew up around kids just like you, like for most of my childhood.
Yes,
So.
Yes, very much. That's like in the early 90s and late 80s. Like that was like a trend, right?
Yeah.
So I was one of those kids. And then I didn't, my father wasn't around. So when Master Chen came along, he had a big influence to my, my life, adolescent life, between the 16, 17, all the way till he passed away. He was he's very influential. He's very traditional, but he's also a tech geek. He's a computer science major, always talk about tech stuff.
Yeah.
And then he makes good money, and then he came from a very wealthy family as well. So you can tell from the way he, speak and the way he act. He came from a scholastic family, and so just in terms of Chinese culture. So if I came here at 12, usually any Chinese or Taiwanese who came to the States or foreign countries since 12 years old, by now their Chinese should be really bad. But because of Master Chen, my Chinese continued to progress and fell in love with Chinese culture, not just the Chinese martial art. So the culture aspect of it, and which is really great, and yeah, and the overall like ethics, the Chinese ethics and the martial art, the other aspect of what martial art can offer. That was really heavy, taught by Master Chen. Yeah,
Well,
and it's interesting, yeah, because he had a son who Eddie Chen. He was a really good athlete, at the time in high school. He's like a football star, wrestling
oh
star,
wow.
baseball star. Like he's just like an all well-rounded like athlete. But he was never interested in. He didn't even know his father was a martial art master. He just see his dad do these like walk these circles in the morning, weird looking exercise. Yeah.
But it's always like that, actually.
Yeah.
And
So
that's also more common than people realize, that teachers, masters
yes.
very seldom
Yes.
ever taught their own children. And,
It's hard. It's hard. I have trouble teaching my own kids as well.
you should get one of your, if you have, one of your shige or something to teach them. So that I think that's the only way.
I have to get my wife's permission on that first.
Oh, okay. Okay.
That's not going to happen.
Well, maybe someday. But I found that that's really, I mean, not only historically, but even today, it's very common.
That's the thing. Yeah. Yes. Not just martial art. Any art, like even sports, right? So, if your father is a professional, like something, you can't. The kids wouldn't follow the footsteps.
Yeah.
Typically.
Or usually they hate that activity because it's so in their face all the time.
Oversaturated.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's good that you had that there, being, separated from your family and your cultural roots. You go to another country and you find somebody who not only helps you maintain that, but deepen those aspects. And look, it's enriched your life. So, yeah.
Yeah, I went overboard.
Yeah, but I think that's the only way to actually do these arts, unfortunately. The longer I do them, the more I realize that the only people that are going to, carry it forward are those wuchi that went overboard. So, what can you do?
Yeah. I mean, the key is just to, how do we keep this thing going, right? So it's obviously, it has its own system of teaching for the longest time in Chinese history, but that system is not as prosperous looking in today's age. It's interesting how in China, like in China, like you guys still show up every morning, to the old masters at, like you're learning from the old masters at 6:00 in the morning. And, I think that thing, it still exists in Taiwan, but it's, it will only be there for so many years until these older generation pass away. And then, and then what happens next?
Well, honestly speaking, the people or the generation that you see still doing what you've just mentioned here even is not the younger generation. So after probably people my age and my generation, I think it's done. The younger generation has zero interest, not only in learning, but in getting out of bed or off their goddamn phones. So
You know what's sad, right? So I out of all of my subscribers on my YouTube channel, like you're probably the same. I don't know about you, like, but I get a lot of like, probably 80%, very encouraging, comments.
Yeah.
And then you have that 20% people talk trash.
Of course.
Right. Then this 20% are always out of these 20%, 95% of them are always in Chinese.
Really?
And then the rest of all the compliments, all the supportive language, everything is all in English. Oh, thank you so much for posting this. Like I finally figured this out. Thank you for sharing. Blah blah blah. It's always in English. Some of course with the Chinese too, but it's just very shockingly sad that most of the trash talk came from either you can tell from the simplified Chinese or versus traditional Chinese, but they're Chinese Asians. So it's just it's sad.
Well, there's a lot of trolls, internet trolls on this side of the world. I mean,
Yeah.
you can probably be happy to realize that probably of those negative comments, 95% of them don't even do martial arts. They're just trolls. So
They don't.
Yeah.
They watch TV.
Yeah.
They watch TV and watch Ma Baoguo got beat up.
yeah, exactly.
And then yeah. So like I would recently I did a series of maybe 3 or 4 episodes of footwork, right? So these footwork I spent some time, basically cross-checking with what's out there with boxing, with various different, footwork. And then I kind of make some modification and develop a drill.
Okay.
And this drill is just footwork. So boxers do it, Muay Thai, the fighters do it. It's just how fighters train fundamental drills. And then you have these trolls come around and say, this would never work. Why are you just walking around in circles? Then you know. These guys have no idea.
Yeah, I find it quite interesting to see this, like, never mind who they are, but that they actually think it's an effective use of their time to sit and write, and I don't understand.
Exactly.
It's like, do you have nothing going on in your life? You got nothing going on, and you got nothing that needs your time. This is what you're spending your time on. It's just, very strange.
Exactly.
So,
yeah, no contribution at all.
yeah, exactly. If it was a constructive or a positive, even if it's some legitimate analysis,
I love that. Yeah.
if it has some sort of value to the, but most of it isn't. So, anyway, we can only do what we can do from ourselves and try to push it forward the way we can.
True.
And hopefully it carries on, The good news is that the way the world is going, it looks like World War III might send us back to the Stone Age, in which case all of our weapon work and our barehanded practice will be very functional. Look, your dog agrees, see?
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, okay, I don't want to keep you for too long. We said it would be about an hour and a half, and we're just over that now. So it's been great talking to you. It's very interesting. It was nice to hear about your endeavors, the histories, the content of Wutan, and what it comprises of, and those stories. I'll get your various contact details and other things that you want included from you afterwards, and we'll put them in the show notes. So if anybody's looking to find you, they can. So.
Awesome. This was thanks again. This was a lot of fun, and finally we get to at least use voice to speak, to discuss. Hopefully, looking forward to meet you in the near future.
Me too.
Yeah.
Me too. Usually the idea of the podcast is to do it in person over a beer. Well, we'll have to meet anyway and just have a beer. So hopefully that can happen sometime soon.
Yes.
So.
Awesome.
All right. Well, thanks for being on.
Thank you so much, and you have a good afternoon.
All right. Well, you too, and we'll keep in touch. Bye for now.
Bye. Bye.